Right. And that sort of leads into the next question is, what are the trends that you're seeing now that all this stuff is sort of bubbling up? I mean, obviously, I think one of the trends, and I know we probably already covered it, was the acquisition of other publishers. And like, so what are some of the trends that you're seeing now that, the third party deprecation is, sort of upon us? And I should say, everybody, I mean, what are we tracking? Like, was it about 50%? Maybe like how much? Because I know Chrome was going to shut everything down in 2023. Now they push you out to 2024. But,
Right.
you can kind of touch on that, what the future landscape might look like. And then, like, what are some of the trends that you're seeing some of these businesses going through?
Yeah, for sure. So, I think there's, like I said, there's a number of different things that are happening. It is harder to reach your audiences in terms of like cookie retargeting. You also find that if you use a third party data graph or an asset company, you are your match rate on actually activating that data is also a big challenge, right? So if you not buy because you can't sell data, but let's say you rent or you get sold a service to reach 100,000 people off of one of these third-party identity graph solutions, right? And you get this data and you're going to try to activate it. Because of all this deprecation, just harder to reach audiences, people are saying no to tracking. Whereas before, maybe you're able to reach a high percentage, a majority percentage, maybe even 70, 80% of that audience, it becomes harder to get that high of a match rate. And for many, it's like maybe 30 to 40% of that audience is being reached because the technology, the cookie deprecation, the privacy options rather being given to consumers, which is great for the consumer, even good for the industry, but it does become harder to do things the old way, right? You just don't have, those same kind of match rates. Typically, what the industry's kind of been leaning into is first party data, right? And that's been, I think, across the board. So whether you are a true third party data asset or third party identity graph company, if you are an agency, if you are an advertiser or a brand, even if you're a large media company, even if you're a publisher, right? The goal is how do I begin to become more data independent? How do I lean into first party data? So even publishers, right? So you're looking at big news sites, CNN type of companies, Fox, etc. Like for these companies, they are making sure that they are getting really good at collecting audiences and creating data, right? In the past, some of these publishers would pass their data off to other companies and say, hey, I'm a news site or a content site, but I'll just, use some tool here to, basically do all the back end of the ads. And I just get paid a percentage, right, of all the ads that come into the space. But now with third party, kind of being much harder to do, you have to lean into doing that stuff yourself, right? So how do you implement as a publisher, as someone who makes content for the web? How do you make sure that you focus on collecting your own first party data, right? And how do you then make sure that you're monetizing this data that you're collecting? So on the publisher side, very much it's definitely changing. And then even for advertisers and their agencies, very much they are leaning into first party data. I'll give you kind of a example, right? Let's say you are a company that sells, baby supplies, and you have this awesome partner that's a third-party identity graph or third-party, data asset, and they say, hey, we're going to get you an audience or a list of like physical, digital, PII audience of people. It's not your data because we're not selling it, but you can activate against this data. These are people that just had a baby, right? And you're a company that sells baby supplies, so great fit. They're theoretically in market for your product. So you're hopeful that this list will work, and you kind of want to see what traffic maybe it drives your website. Maybe it's a digital activation. Yes, it's not a high match rate. Maybe you're only able to reach 30 to 40% of them, but fine. It's a digital activation. And you maybe even send mail to them, target them with digital display ads. But all this data, since you can't really buy data anymore, It's essentially data that you're renting, right? You want it to convert. You're hoping that this magical list of people that just had a baby, we hope that they convert and they buy something from you, right? Otherwise, it becomes very expensive because you kind of rented this list. You can't buy it. And after you rented this list from the third-party data company, you want to make sure that you are being able to convert it. You really want to ideally own that data, right? But that doesn't always happen. And I think every brand and agency is like, the conversion rate is low. We're going to extract more out of this audience. We're only seeing 2% of that audience convert and actually buy something. How do we get more lift out of that? So that's a big challenge. One thing that we find valuable, and something that obviously we help with as well, is to help this baby company take all those programmatic audiences and turn them into first party households, right? And if you can, as a baby supply company, if you can turn them into first party households, then you get to keep that first party data, right? Maybe some of those people will convert now, right? Maybe you're not going to get that much more than 2 to 3%, but now you're not renting it, right? Just like they say, it's better to buy than rent. It's not renting anymore. You have those, you get to own those audiences. Some of them may convert now, and some of them may convert later, right? So if you can use something that essentially transmutes or transforms all this like traffic that's driving to your site from the third party data asset, you can now convert the most powerful parts of it into a first party data asset. And the second part of that is, well, what do I do after that, right? Is there even more value? You can go like, that's the 101, right? The 201 is, okay, now go back to your third-party data asset and give them this list of people that have converted, right? Or just the people that you own, and you say, hey, these are real people. We've transmuted them into real first-party households. Now you can give them to your third-party data asset and say, hey, I know typically you find like 100,000 and you give it to me, and I kind of rent that from you. Instead, take these 50,000 that I identified from your audience down to a household level, and go find people like that, because they were really good, high qualified people that raised their hand. They shopped. Some of them bought, some of them may not have, but I know that they're like real households. I can see that it's data that I own. Go find more that look like that. And so now the third-party data company is going to get you an even better, audience that you can look for new parents, right? But even more honed in on this data exchange, and they send another set of audience to you. You convert more of that into first-party data, and you send it back to them. So it kind of becomes a loop where, at the end of it, you're getting into this really good kind of rhythm and pattern of how to best use a third-party data asset. And meanwhile, you're also collecting and owning your audience because you have all these households for yourself.